knight in armor. And next you're going to see a demonstration with the daggers. Now the daggers, I find when I go out and teach students, regardless of, they like to feel the sword, they like to get a poleaxe in their hand, but they love the daggers for some reason. Maybe much more appropriate weapons for nowadays. The length that you see in these daggers is a long blade, and certainly those were called longo daggers. And the reason that they were used for is because you could get a lot better reach. It was like that top spike on a poleaxe. It's a nice long spike. You can jab through armor, you can jab through steel, if you got enough force behind it. And that would be used in harnish fighting, in armored combat. However, perhaps tonight, walking around town, we carry a dagger much like this. This is a replica of an original medieval dagger made as close to historically possible as it could, dating to the 15th century. So the only difference between unarmored dagger fighting, armored dagger fighting, is that you could slice your opponent if you had the opportunity. You could cut his skin instead of only stabbing. So, gentlemen, if you will. There's a lot of techniques that went on there that you really weren't able to see. So in the initial engagement, we're going to take the slow motion. As he comes through, he applies an upper shield. So he's completely blocked, he's completely stopped his opponent. But what is this individual doing? He's putting his momentum forward. So what he does is he pulls his hand to the side, he locks in the wrist, and as he yanks down, he presses on the shoulder to apply an arm bar. Now, sensing this, he knows that the enemy can do this. He releases one hand. So he's able to slide out. So they begin again, they attack again. And at this point, as you can see, now you're good. He stopped the block with his forearm, with his wrist, and he locked it down. He essentially trapped his entire hand. Now at this point, if he had a tight enough grip, when it's crossed here, if it was tight enough, the idea for this technique is to literally wrench his opponent all the way to the ground until he made his opponent fall on the ground, and then he could stab him in the back of the head.
Why is the blade cutting the wrist in the hands at this point?
Because longo daggers were more so not sharp on the sides, but like on this poleaxe, the main portion was the point to stab through and not necessarily on the sides. No problem at all. And thank you for asking that question. So what he wound up doing instead, what you saw in this actual demonstration, is as he was going through the ground, he grabbed his dagger, he released through, and he stabbed. As he was pulling back, he continued pressing forward. That's called knockback, or following after. Whenever your opponent backs up in medieval combat, you follow after him. Because you know as he's backing up, you can just push him, and his leverage will go down. Okay, and from there, now he comes through, and basically, in this technique, I'll actually turn this for these gentlemen to see. When he comes forward, he's going to perform a left-handed thrust. As he performs this through, he's literally blocked his attack. He's trying to stab his opponent, but it's not going to do much against armor. So what he does is he winds his hand, applies an arm bar, and this individual simply, he can either be taken to the ground and killed, or he can just totally let go of his weapon. Lets go of his weapon and he continues to fight. Now this individual applies what you call an interstitch, or a stab from below. He grabs the wrist down here, grabs the dagger, wrenches it out of his hand, and stabs him in the back of the neck, or the back. So that's what you have there. Now, out of the poleaxe, out of the sword, and out of the dagger, what do you think a knight would want to fight with first? Sword? Poleaxe? Poleaxe? Why do y'all think the poleaxe? Longer range. Longer. Had more ability to defeat a man in armor. Now, if you grab that poleaxe, now, we're going to Now, if I had this long poleaxe, and we were fighting, and we met in the middle, and I came here, at this point, if I've made this mistake, the idea of the choice would be to go over his head and wrench him backwards. But say I came here, and at this point there's nothing I can really do. But what I can do is drop my poleaxe and grab my dagger and go straight forward. So the poleaxe was the first choice for a knight on foot. However, the dagger was always a primary backup weapon for a knight. Always had to have his dagger. If you didn't, you would be in a lot of trouble.
Where is that?
I'm sorry?
Where would you have your dagger?
You would actually have it on the right side, and just like I have this sheet here, you basically have it suspended right here, so that a sword would be suspended on your opposite side of your primary, so that you could grab the long sword with your primary hand, grab the sheath, and pull it out. However, with the dagger, you wanted it on your primary side, so you could pull your dagger straight out and instantly attack. Now, knights did not primarily fight on foot. The original word for knights, there's a couple of words. The one in Germany was Ritter, which meant rider. And so a primary weapon for the knight to use in combat, while he was mounted on a horse, was a lance. So early on in the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries, this would simply be about this thickness all the way through. He would not have this hand grip here, but it would be just like a long spear. There's no difference in the name of it. However, getting into the late 14th and the 15th century, as this lance developed on horseback, the knight would be able to have a long leverage, and no matter how much my opponent had a poleaxe in his hand, my lance could definitely reach him first. So, originally, knights primarily fought on horseback, and the lance was their primary weapon. Once they got done with the charge, they would leave the battlefield, circle around to their squires, pick up another lance, and charge forth again. So that was the idea behind the lance. Then if the knight had went to the ground in his work, and he did not have a poleaxe on him, his squires would be looking on, and his squires would instantly run to his side, bring him a poleaxe or any weapon that he needed. Squires were multifunctional. However, we're going to start to talk about more so the beginning of knights. Where knights got their start, how did they come about? And we go to the year 732. In 732 of the 8th century, the king of the Franks was Charles Martel. Now, Charles Martel was a bit of a different king than all the others in medieval Europe. Because if I was fighting a war against another country or against another group of knights, and they lost, well then I wouldn't want their armor, I wouldn't want their weapons, because I know, ultimately, that they lost using it, so why am I going to use it, right? So a lot of these kings, a lot of these commanders and knights, they wouldn't pick up the opposing army's weapons or armor. However, Charles Martel picked up everything that was left on the battlefield. Anything, whether it seemed insignificant, whether it seemed that the enemy completely lost the battle because of it, he picked it up. And through an engagement with a Muslim army, Charles Martel fought against this Muslim army. And Charles Martel knew for a fact, actually if we can get 2 volunteers, that'd be great. Okay, you and you. I'll call you next, I promise. I got lots of parts. Okay, so visual representation always works a little bit better, right? So he's your name?
Josh.
Josh. So we have Josh and Sam. Brother, oh, your brothers. You're the same. Okay. All right, so Josh is going, Josh, right? Okay, good. Josh is going to represent Charles Martel, the king of the Franks. And Sam, right, is going to represent the Muslim army, the Muslim forces. Now, what's interesting about this engagement is that the commander of the Muslim army, he had something that was called a cataphracts.